ka Hawaiʻi no alua. Hanau ia I kukani loko. O ahiwa ke kahua. O lihu e ke ewe. O ka ala ka piko. O kapu kapua ke a ka a o kaiaka I mai ai. E ke kialiʻi no e alua I o ahu. Mele no ka pawa. Aloha, ana ai kākou, ua o Ioane, no wau ma kukani loko I wahiwa me Ohana. I'm Ioane, I live here at Kukani Loko, Wahiwa with my family, and I'm here to welcome you to the Food System Summit today. Mahalo nui for joining us. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about where we are. I just wanted to welcome you to this place and introduce this place to you. Very honored to be here. Very honored to share this space with everybody. Right now we stay in Kukani Loko, the 36,000 acres between the Waiʻanae Mountains and the Poʻalaus. This place is very special. Oftentimes Kukani Loko is mistaken for being our sacred birthstones, which is actually Kapalahuawa. And Kukani Loko is the surrounding space, like I said, between those mountain ranges, encompassing all of those areas. Traditionally, the mele that I just did was for Papawa, the first ali'i born in the sacred birthstone site. Not only were ali'i born here in those birthstones areas, but they were raised here under the discipline and tradition of 13 different kahuna, so they could learn 13 different major disciplines taught to make them the best leaders they could to interact with kanaka, with ʻāina. Kukani Loko also can be interpreted as to anchor the cry from within. And Wahiwa is also known as place everlasting. And another term that we use here a lot is ka'ananiau. And I'll leave that open for anyone who wants to find the meaning for themselves in that. Next slide, please. I just wanted to also introduce our winds and our rains here. We have the Waikopua, that's our nourishing rain. And we have the Waikoloa, that's the cold wind that's descending down from Mount Ka'ala to clear the uplands. And we also have the Kehau, which is a rain and a wind, sort of a mist that comes across the plains here. And that's pretty much it. That's Wahiwa here. That's Kukani Loko. Mahalo for joining us.
So before I start inviting up my dear friends and honored guests to say a few words, I have to uplift the amazing support and care of our sponsors and collaborators this year. If we can change the slide. We have University of Hawaii, West Oahu, Keomau, College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resilience, Hawaii Public Health Institute, the Healy Foundation, Hawaii Investment Ready, Hawaii Community Foundation, Ho'opono Initiative, Hawaii Meals on Wheels, Purple Micah, HFSS Planners, Ready Zone HQ, Wahiwa Value Added Product Development Center, Chef Anela and Roots Cafe, ʻŌlelo Media, who's going to be filming today, Wahine Coders, Hawaii Youth Food Council, we got youth in the house, mahalo kavika for making sure they were present, and Super Persistence. And the summit would not be a summit, would not be possible without the profound dedication, rigor, and passion gifted to us by this year's volunteer steering committee members that literally co-developed and designed what you will be experiencing over the next 2 days through consensus, collaborative, creative collaboration, and technology of trust, which is something I've been leaning into more lately. They truly embody what my mentor, beloved Auntie Dr. Manulani Luli-Meyer would call mutual emergence. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to call up a dear friend, a genuine soul, and founding member of Transforming Hawaii Food Systems Together to set the contextual stage grounded for this year's theme. Dr. Albie Miles holds a PhD in environmental science, policy, and management from the University of California, Berkeley. His research explores the intersection of farm systems, biodiversity, ecosystem services, and the social, economic, and political challenges to advancing ecologically sustainable and socially just food systems. Please give a round of applause to Dr. Albie Miles.
Aloha, everybody. Albie Miles, University of Hawaii, West Oahu, and I'm very fortunate to also work on the new University of Hawaii Systems Center with Dr. Noah Lincoln. It's called the K.O. Miles Center for Sustainable Island Food Systems. So what I want to do is provide a little bit of context, a little bit of an introduction to what food system resilience is and how it's constituted, and then talk very briefly about social infrastructure and the social infrastructure that we are building by being in this room together today. So as many of you know, we just exited the COP30 in Brazil. And though there have been some significant gains in terms of international agreements, the current climate pledges that coming out of the COP30 are really inadequate to keep anthropogenic climate forcing below 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming. So in addition to other socially created crises, such as government shutdown, the COVID-19 pandemic, the wildfires in ʻŌlelo, we're also facing the consequences of impacts to our food system as a result of climate destabilization. Next slide. And what will likely become more frequent and severe weather disturbances, such as what we experienced in 2018 with the near miss of Hurricane Lane. Next slide. There we go. So as many people have mentioned, is with climate destabilization advancing, there are going to be more frequent and severe weather disturbances like hurricane-sized storms hitting more directly on the Hawaiian Islands. And we are really profoundly ill-prepared for these possible consequences. And so next slide, please. What I want to do is go over a couple of key points of vulnerability in the food system of Hawaii. So as many of you already know, we have extremely high rates of household food insecurity. The Hawaii Food Bank estimates that we have about 30% of Hawaii households. That's about 450,000 people in Hawaii who are chronically food insecure. We did some recent work based on the recommendations of the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency of the 14-day supply of food, water, and essential medicine. We asked the question, how many people are actually prepared with that 14-day supply of food, water, and medicine? And our findings are 12% of Hawaii households are prepared for a significant natural disaster. Many of them foresee that they are actually prepared when in fact they are not. We have very low levels of food self-sufficiency, as many already know. And the foods that we do produce are highly perishable, inconsistent with the recommendations of the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency and FEMA in terms of having shelf-stable, high-calorie, protein-rich foods that are ready to eat in the household. So we may want to have local agriculture support disaster response and resilience, but it should be thought of as a recovery effort, economically, in providing food to the households over a longer period of time. So I think I just want to emphasize the point that we need to be household ready and community ready, and that means shelf-stable, high-calorie, high-protein foods that are ready to eat. One of the things that was brought to my attention by David Lopez, who is here today, is that all of our critical systems infrastructure is on the south side of this island. And with a significant storm coming close to this island, much of that critical infrastructure could be destabilized. And so we need to be thinking about being able to operate partially independently of the Port of Honolulu in the case of a significant disaster. Next slide. So here's some work that we did a few years ago identifying what are some of the key food system infrastructure points at the Port of Honolulu, and were a Category 3 and above storm approach the island, then you'd see levels of inundation well into up toward H1. And so a lot of the critical import infrastructure would be damaged in that process. So we need to be thinking again about resilience efforts that take into account the possible closure of the Port of Honolulu. So we have very limited amounts of commercial and emergency food storage. This has been repeated throughout the years. We have a commercial supply that may last 3 to 5 days once the Port of Honolulu is closed. And so that's why the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency recommends that we have that 14-day supply of food, water, and essential medicine. The amount of emergency meals ready to eat that are stored by FEMA are estimated about 3 days for this island alone. That leaves that there are neighbor islands out in terms of the ability to actually provision food for them. The last couple things I'll mention is that there is inadequate coordination between the agencies like FEMA, ʻāina, and actors like the private sector who are responsible for delivering food to all of us 24/7. And so those relationships really need to be buttressed and formalized. And then the last thing I'll mention on key points of vulnerability is we need to keep reminding ourselves that there are, on any given day, there's 230,000 additional mouths to feed that are not part of the residential population. So all of this I'm articulating only to provide us with a bit of a snapshot on critical points of vulnerability in the system. And ideally, we begin thinking through this systematically so we can come up with plans in case of a significant natural disaster. We've done relatively well with these slow-moving crises like COVID-19, but in the case of a significant natural disaster where infrastructure is damaged, then we're in an entirely different set of conditions. And so I just want to put a fine point on it. So resilience is, to summarize, resilience is the ability of the food system to provide us with food security, adequate amounts of safe, affordable food for people to live their normal lives. And this illustration is a simple schematic showing that if there is some kind of shock to the system, our regular level of food availability is going to drop potentially precipitously. And it's going to take a period of time to recover. How far we drop and how long it takes to recover is a measure of resilience. So when we begin to work collaboratively, as we're doing today and tomorrow, we can start to assemble the key components of the food system that are necessary to build resilience. That way we fall less far and we recover more quickly. Next slide, please. So there's been an emergence of academic literature looking at this question of food system resilience over the last 10 years. I just want to summarize very briefly what are some of the key attributes of food systems that make them more resilient. Next slide. So what they talk about in the academic literature is the following. There needs to be greater awareness of the system in which we're all embedded. If we don't know that only 12% of households are actually emergency prepared, then we can't come up with the appropriate policies to support household preparedness. We need to have redundancy in the system. Obviously, we're importing an overwhelming majority of our food through the Port of Honolulu. That's then distributed across the state. If that Port of Honolulu goes down, then we don't really have abilities to import food into the state. And so having redundancy in terms of food supply at the household level, at the community level, and held within the private sector are important aspects of redundancy that build resilience of the system. And I'll go through these last couple of components here. Connectivity, what we're doing today, bringing you all together. You all have different roles and responsibilities in the food and agricultural sector of Hawaii. We need to build strategic relationships that are enduring through time. That's what connectivity is really about. Adaptive capacity. We've been doing that as we have been facing crises throughout the last couple of years. We're building the muscle memory to respond more rapidly. So there's been incredible innovation in terms of our adaptive capacity. Diversity, that has to do with local agriculture. Our ability to have diversified crops, diversified cropping systems, and different ways to import foods into the state. Those are all key in terms of diversifying our food access. And then last, equity. Equity has to be woven throughout all of our work in order to ensure that those who are most vulnerable are taken into consideration. And I think a key example is the work that was done by Chad Buck and the folks at the Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center, identifying a vulnerable community and pre-positioning emergency food in a vulnerable community. So here are the objectives of the Food Systems Summit. We want to identify key points of vulnerability. I've shared a few today. They'll be reiterated throughout the event. I want everybody to understand the landscape of food system planning, including disaster preparedness in Hawaii. So there's been a lot of work happening in terms of state level food system planning that's happening at the state and county level. We want to understand what each of us are doing at our different locations in the food system. We want to help everyone identify what are some key actions that need to be taken, including eventually integrating some ideas around food system resilience and equity into our state planning processes. And ultimately, we want to be learning from recent disasters. So there's a wealth of knowledge, having gone through a series of disasters, including COVID-19, the Lahaina fires. There are lessons to be learned and things to share with one another that have policy implications. So next slide, please, and then I'll wrap up. What's now understood from the scientific literature is that food system resilience is really essential, both physically and then also socially. The infrastructure, the social infrastructure that we're building through coming together is critical to responding to future natural disasters, and those relationships need to be formalized. We need to have enduring social connections, policy relationships that allow us to build resilience into the future. And so I just want to thank you all for participating today, and thank you for all of your hard work over the next couple of days, and I look forward to the conversations. Thank you.
Albie. All right, now that we have a little bit of a baseline to navigate our 2 days together, we have a few more honorees we just want to welcome up to share a few words. First, I'd like to invite our honorary guest, First Lady Jaime Kanani Green, born and raised on Oahu, Kaneohe. After graduating from Iolani School, she received her bachelor's degree from Brown University. She returned home and attained her law degree from the University of Hawaii, William Richardson School of Law. After practicing family law, she decided to focus on child advocacy through policy and nonprofit work. Please help me welcome First Lady Jaime Green.
First of all, I just want to mahalo all of you for all of the work that you have done and continue to do, for being here with open minds, for your time and energy to make our state more resilient. It's such an important part of what we are here for today, to celebrate our culture, to acknowledge our connection to our ʻāina, to prepare for our future generations. So we just want to mahalo all of you for being a part of this. And thank you to all of our committee for creating this wonderful summit and opportunity for us to strengthen our collaborations, our networks, and to really understand what our system is currently, what we need to do to strengthen it, and how we can work together in the future. So our food system is the foundation of our well-being. It sustains our families, our economy, and our culture. And as we face the growing impacts of climate change, natural disasters, and global disruptions, it is clear that food security is inseparable from disaster preparedness and community resilience. We already know that 1 in 3 of our people are food insecure. So this isn't just about emergency preparedness. This is about strengthening our whole food system so that we can feed our people on a daily basis. Our administration remains deeply committed to our state's food security. Under Governor Green, the state has established and invested in the new Office of Recovery and Resilience, which is coordinating efforts to strengthen disaster preparedness, climate adaptation, and long-term recovery across all sectors, including food and agriculture. This represents a major step toward ensuring that Hawaii is ready to respond and recover quickly from future crises while building a stronger, more self-reliant foundation for our people. But true resilience for our state requires all of us to come together. Farmers, educators, researchers, policymakers, and our state agencies and community leaders. You, all of us here today, exemplify this spirit of collective leadership and aloha ʻāina that will carry Hawaii forward to create a food system that is sustainable, equitable, and resilient. A food system that provides locally sourced nutritious meals for our keiki, for our families and our community. One that is rooted in respect for our ʻāina traditions and culture while incorporating innovation and technology. Mahalo to each of you for your leadership, vision, and dedication to Hawaii's future. Together, we are building partnerships and a spirit of cooperation that will ensure our island community can thrive. So mahalo nui loa and best wishes for a productive and inspiring summit.
Mahalo, First Lady. We got a few more presenters or honorees, and then we're going to jump into some talk story. So next, I'd love to invite another honorary guest, Senator Donovan Dela-Cruz, to share a few remarks. Senator Dela-Cruz has emerged as a strong proponent of revitalizing Hawaii's local agriculture sector, especially in central Oahu, which is his district. He has championed efforts to transform former plantation lands into a diversified, modern ag economy. Please help me welcome Senator Dela-Cruz.
Aloha. Welcome to Wahewa. Actually, I grew up down the street, and my grandparents worked in the pineapple fields. My dad worked in the pineapple fields, and I graduated from ʻŌlelo High School. And so when I grew up, when I was really young, Whitmore was bustling. You know, the plantation was full of jobs. People would walk to work, or they had a job in close proximity when they would just have a short drive. And so we didn't really transition from live, work, play, which we once had, to what we have now. And so part of what we're trying to accomplish with 3 specific projects: biosecurity, regional kitchens, and the product development network. And they're very synergistic because it's going to take a lot for us to be very independent, sustainable, grow our economy, and make sure that we have as very little imports as possible. You know, we're going to try our best with the resources that we have and with the department's assistance and initiatives. And I'm proud to say that we are making some progress, and this facility is part of that. So when I was a kid, this was a hardware store. And before that, it was Standard Oil. So for many of you who maybe not aware of Wahewa's history, Wahewa was established in around 1896 by a member of Kalakaua cabinet. He had left the cabinet, he came to Wahewa to farm, and then he wrote to his friends from where? Where did he write? California, which is why we have California Avenue. So his friends from California came, they started farming, and that's why a lot of our street names are named after them. There's a little dark history to that too, because they actually tried to start an apartheid movement. It was supposed to be a whites-only community. But the plantation just wouldn't allow that, in the sense where we had Filipinos, Japanese, Chinese, Koreans, and they really depended on the labor of all these different ethnic groups, which is why Wahewa is so diverse today. And then Schofields was established about 10 years later. So we've been together for over 100 years, which is why there's such a strong relationship between Wahewa and its neighboring communities. So I'll just quickly show you some slides just to so that we can at least summarize some of the efforts that we're working on. Next. So a lot of it, going back to what Albie had presented, is we need to invest in local infrastructure, workforce capacity, and shared facilities. We need to leverage the state's purchasing power to help local farmers which will help us achieve better child nutrition through locally produced food. Next. So in addition to this facility, the state has made quite a bit of investment to try to make sure that we can build out what was once the hub for dole. So dole started off with 1 acre and ended up with 8,000 acres all across central Oahu. But this 40-acre site is where dole, that was the hub of dole. It was where the cannery first was established. It was all the trucking hubs. It was all the processing equipment. It was all the administrative offices. And you can see Whitmore right around. So when dole had about 8,000 acres, plantation camps scattered the whole area. And probably in the 40s, they merged all the camps into one community, and that's Whitmore. So my dad remembers he was in Camp Brody. They just put their house on the truck. They drove it to Whitmore, and one by one, they just started bringing in everyone's homes. One side of the town was mainly Japanese, and on the other side of the town, it was mainly Filipinos. So now what the state has purchased about 4,000 acres of ag land, because if we're serious about wanting to protect ag, we need to purchase ag land or acquire more ag land. And so what you see here is in the yellow, that's going to be DOE's regional kitchen. In the brown, that's going to be Agribusiness Development Corporation's value-added center. I'm just going to call it that for now. And right next to that is going to be the high-pressure process machine. So some of the things that Albie talked about, that's so that we can make sure that we have shelf-stable food. And the red and the green, that's going to be offices and warehouse spaces for farmers and value-added producers, so that we can start to cluster, aggregate facilities, and create a lot more synergy. Next. So if you haven't heard of a regional kitchen, how many people eat at Zippy's? So Zippy's, that's their model. They use a regional kitchen in Waipio. What that allows them to do is aggregate purchasing from a lot of local farmers. And so that is what we want to accomplish. There was a whole bunch of us that went to Denver recently, and we looked at their regional kitchen or their central kitchen, because they're just one school district. And you could see the amount that they purchased, one from large farmers and from small farmers. There was one small farmer there that just backed up his small pickup truck, and he was able to sell his lettuce to the kitchen. And so this is really going to allow farmers some place where they can sell their produce and then hopefully scale up. So what we want to try to supplant is all the ag on the mainland that we're importing, processing, shipping over. We want to grow that locally, but we're going to have to invest in shared facilities, such as regional kitchens, such as slaughterhouses, such as processing plants, so that we can make sure that farmers have the ability to process what they grow locally, no matter what size they are, so that DOE can purchase what they grow. In addition to that, when we start to scale up, then we can make sure we can also supply our hospitals, our jails, and make sure that we have food for natural disasters. Okay, this is DOE's list of all the different districts or complexes and how many students. So they have about, I think, Oahu has about 105,000 students. Oahu. So the plan for Oahu, next slide. You can see here, according to DOE, what they've tried to do is map out how many regional kitchens that they're going to need throughout the state. So our shared facilities would distribute the produce to those kitchens around the state. So then instead of flying food from the mainland, we'd be flying food into Riley. Okay, so for the next slide. So for shared facilities, we actually have one that we're investing in right now. DBIT and ADC is trying to work out the details. And the facility is a small animal slaughterhouse in Kunia. So if you were to just imagine that circle in the middle is a small animal slaughterhouse, and then you see those 5 farmers. Now they can scale up producing hogs. They have some place to process it, a slaughterhouse. And near the slaughterhouse, there should be cold storage as well, so that now they can process their hogs and they can sell to DOE. And whatever DOE doesn't buy, they can sell to local retailers, hotels, or restaurants. And then that also supports our value-added network as well, because now you can take the pig ears and make like dog treats. You can make bacon bits, bacon jam, bacon, all kinds of different types of bacon. So now you have these different components of using all of what we're trying to grow to create entrepreneurship, and so that we can make sure that we have local produce for the Department of Education. Okay, next slide. So the ADC, Deputy Dave Wicker, and the CTAR Dean are in the process of finalizing a commodity map. So they're scouring the whole state, looking at old reports, trying to define which commodities grow the best in the different microclimates throughout the state. So if Waianae has hogs, other areas such as Kauai, for instance, they're in the process of growing rice. So we could try to scale up rice production on Kauai. Different parts of the state would have a different commodity based on their microclimate. And that's where we can really specialize and purchase and invest in scaled facilities for that specific commodity in that area. And if we need land, then that's something that the state's going to have to try to figure out as far as acquiring more land so that we could scale up that crop in that region. And there's different methods. Last year, we passed a bill so that the state could do land swaps with large landowners. So in exchange for ag land, we could swap that for some of the TOD land that we own along the rail line. So if someone wants to develop, we want them to save ag land, but they can develop the TOD land. So there's a lot of different things going on, but it takes a lot to push, which is why this group is extremely important, because many of you have a voice. If you know your elected official, as you become aware of these different policies and bills that get passed, and if you're in agreement, then you can go and tell your legislator, come on, let's get this thing moving. So if you take the pork commodity here, and you just look at all the different things that we can try to scale up. Eggs and liquid eggs, fruits and vegetables, beef, dairy, at some point poultry, fish, sweet potato, hulu, buckwheat for flour, rice, kalo, and many other commodities that were not identified yet because we're waiting for the final report. Each commodity could have one or more shared facilities, and again, all of the different squares are the farmers. I mean, it's not limited to 5, but that's just to give you a graphic that farmers now have access to a shared facility so that they can make sure their product is processed. And with the value-added network, about 30 to 40% of some farmers, they have seconds, off-grades, extra produce that they don't sell. Now they can sell that to an entrepreneur that's part of the network. Probably someone who's probably going to go through a class here. And that's something that I know Chris Bailey and Brian Miyamoto from Farm Bureau, they're trying to work out so that if you're an entrepreneur or if you have your existing business and you want to know what kind of commodities are out there where they have extra produce or they have seconds and off-grades, Chris and Brian are trying to work out a live list here at the Value Added Center. So if you want to make a certain product, or you're not sure what you want to make and you see the list of commodity available, then there's a farmer that you can buy it from. And this is the last slide. So all of this put together helps create a demand for local farmers, but we need to invest in shared facilities, and it helps create a more resilient food system. All of it needs to be together to work. We need the biosecurity if we're going to scale up commodities. You also need the value added so that farmers can sell their off-grades and seconds so that they can make a living. We just don't want part-time farmers or hobbyist farmers. We also want people who want to choose that as a career and that they can live with a good salary here in Hawaii going into ag. But there's lots of people. I would just want to point out 2 people. Scotty Porter, he's back there. He's raising his hand. He's ADC's commodity coordinator. So all those different commodities, he's in the process of mapping out plans for each commodity. He just started, so it's going to take a little bit. And then Anela, where is Anela? There she is. Okay, she's the product development manager for ADC. So both of them are having recently hired. They're working closely with the DBED deputy director in developing plans and really starting to implement as well. because we just can't keep planning and planning. We plan so long and we don't see things. So we need to start investing in facilities. The First Lady and I and Senator Gabbard were recently in Whitmore. We broke ground on infrastructure for exactly this 40 acres. So DAGS is in the process of building infrastructure so that we can start to put in some money for the actual facilities. It's going to take a little bit of time, but the fact that we're on the way is huge. One thing about the First Lady is she's very, very quietly forceful to make sure that a lot of these projects are moving along. She has her commitment to feed all of Hawaii's keiki. And one of the things that we've talked about in the legislature, Senator Gabbard, Rep. Russo, Rep. Chun, is that I think many of us do believe we want to make sure that, especially at the Department of Education, we can provide at least 3 to 4 meals for Hawaii's keiki. This past year, we were able to pass a bill that expanded the free and reduced lunch to Alice families. And I know the First Lady's goal is to even expand that even further, and many of us support that. But when we start to have local commodities, all the federal funds that we get can be recirculated into our economy as we scale up commodities, which only helps justify the expansion of free and reduced, because the money is going back into the state instead of just being shipped out. And so that's going to take a little bit, but I think we're on our way thanks to the efforts of many people on this table right here. But I want to thank you guys all for participating. Anything that we can do to support your efforts so that we can achieve sustainability, food independence, a better economy and agriculture, we want to make sure that we can achieve that. And we can only do that with your help. So mahalo.
Mahalo nui, Senator Dela-Cruz. All right, I want to invite up Chris Bailey to just welcome you to the space. He is the manager of this space. Just for a few words, Chris Bailey is knows about value of food from growing up while his mother and aunt ran a Thai restaurant in Waipahu, something new you didn't know about him. He spent time working in the industry in Portland while studying business at Lewis and Clark College. Please welcome Chris Bailey briefly to share a little bit about the space.
Hi, good morning. Happy Monday. On behalf of the whole team, I just want to extend a warm welcome to the Waipahu Value-Added Product Development Center. So we are a state-of-the-art incubator for local food manufacturers. We really want to support the value-added food movement, not only just connecting the processors, but also the farmers and ranchers that are providing the inputs that are going into exceptional local products. We support existing business, but also up-and-coming business. People that want to take an idea and actually realize it and take it to market. And we do it all under the banner of education. So this is a project of the University of Hawaii, specifically Leeward Community College, in partnership with the state. So we got the doors open in April of 2024, but we only had users in this facility as recently as December of 2024. So we're going on the first year of use, and we're seeing incredible results. And so actually, I encourage you, there are going to be tours all through the summit. Take a tour. You'll see some of our value-added manufacturers processing their products. Support local. I think we can never understress the importance of being able to support more local food, because these are the people, the individuals that are going to get their products into our communities. I see a lot of new faces, so I look forward to connecting with all you. And so again, welcome. Let's have a good summit. Thank you all.
Mahalo. Yeah, working with Naomi and the team here has been absolutely a pleasure. So just mahalo, Naomi and the team. You'll meet folks today that are working day in and out and they're stewards of this place, especially if you go on tour. Okay, last but not least, and then we're going to get into some little discussions amongst each other. I want to invite up our 2 steering committee members just to briefly share about 2 very special components of the summit. Leslie Nugent and Jason Shon, if you want to come up and share real briefly about the Wellness Corner and our taste testing of emergency food supplies.
All right. Hey, everyone. Good morning. So good to be here with you. This year, as our steering committee was coordinating the summit, we felt like it was really important in this collective care work that we do to really have a space to ground our wellness at the summit. So this year, and hopefully any summits moving forward, we have a space where you can step back, take a pause, do some self-care, some nervous system regulation. So where to find the wellness corner is out this back door here. You'll take a left to get to go past all of the really amazing production happening. There's some signs guiding you to the wellness corner and also the upstairs mezzanine. So you can head up the stairs and there's an elevator there somewhere too. So upstairs we have a little nook, have some tea, make some art, write a note to a loved one, make a lei, stretch out, whatever you need to do. This is your space, this is our space.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Shaw. We also have a household emergency food preparedness showcase. We have several community organizations who have brought in actual examples of what that looks like, and that will be incorporated into our content for the morning. So I'll be quiet. I know we're a little bit behind schedule, and I'll be the mic back to.
Okay, so panelists, we have Kyle Tucker from Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. Please come up as I call your name. Kyle's been working with ʻāina for 3 years, working in mass care and human services the whole time. During the Lahaina fire responses, but also became more immersed in mass care and has been working to improve mass care plans and coordination since. Our next panelist is Ryan Yoshimoto, the Salvation Army APAC. He's a divisional director of emergency disaster services. Collaborates with federal, state, county, private, and nonprofit partners to deliver meals and provide spiritual and emotional care to all without discrimination. Our next panelist is Tom Olson. He's a staff officer in operations for the Hawaii County Civil Defense. Tom has served in various capacities, supporting a myriad of emergency activations, including hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, wildfires, pandemic responses, wind, surf, and flooding incidents, and a civil disturbance operation. And our next panelist, a dear friend from Vibrant Hawaii, Chief Executive Officer Janice Ikeda. Janice Ikeda coordinates rapid community-led food distribution, aligning local growers, vendors, volunteers, to distribution sites to reach families efficiently and with care when needs spike. During the recent federal government shutdown, Vibrant Hawaii led the coordination of 14 community distribution sites that mobilized 450 plus volunteers, contributing 2,000 plus hours to serve 6,000 families with food and essential supports.
Thanks so much. And then we'd like to introduce our last but not least final panelist, David Lopez at the Office of Recovery. David previously led Heaivilin, has a long history in disaster preparedness and response. Thank you all for joining in this panel.
So part of the hope for today is to build an understanding of some of the roles and relationships from civil society to formal government response. The panel has a robust history and diverse current positions working in disaster preparedness and response. And we're hoping to build some awareness, as Albie mentioned, build some connectivity across some of these different ideas. And I'll turn it to Amanda.
Yeah, thank you. I think really there's that piece about this panel that is about that connectivity, not just forging that and moving through things at the summit, but showing how things are already connected. So we've really asked our panelists to focus in on how they work with other agencies and entities. It really fits in, I think, with where the summit is going in terms of helping us all understand different actors and advocates and their roles. And also just where they play into not only emergency response and preparedness, but into how that intersects with our wider food system. As Senator Dela-Cruz was saying, there's needs for shared storage and infrastructure. We know emergency management also requires a lot of that for the response effort. So really hoping to give that picture and connect that back to the rest of the themes throughout the few days. We will pass it over in a second to the panelists to get started. We'll just ask folks to keep it brief if you can, where we'd like to make sure we give all of you the chance to share a little bit about your work. But we are moving a little behind time today, so we'll try to keep us together. In that spirit as well, as these folks are talking, please note down your questions. We've got room in the back there, I think by Dexter and Alex for audience questions. We won't necessarily have time to do those live at the end, but encourage you to reach out to these fantastic folks throughout the summit. They don't bite. They're more than willing to answer questions and talk story a little bit. And we want to make sure that we can kind of get through those and maybe reflect on those towards the end of the summit together.
So with your brief response windows, I'll just start with an easy one. What is your role when disaster happens? Maybe we'll start with Kyle. Take us off.
As an organization, Jaime is primarily responsible for. Can you hear me? Better. Okay. So as an organization, no.
Cheers and low mics.
Better? Okay. So as an organization, Jaime is primarily a coordinating element between the county and the federal response. Yeah, that's mainly what we do. So we also have the ability, when we're activated or when the counties call upon us for help, we have the ability to activate other state agencies, we call ESFs, emergency support functions, where each of those is primarily focused on a different sector of response and recovery. So ESF 1 is transportation, ESF 6, mass care, emergency assistance. There's up to 20, but we're primarily responsible for coordinating response in efforts getting to recovery and return to normalcy.
Okay, so I represent the Emergency Disaster Services for Salvation Army. Our primary mission is to provide spiritual and emotional care and to feed the masses without discrimination. So in the time of need, we oftentimes pair up with Red Cross or the request of either the county or the state to come in and feed and provide spiritual and emotional care, along with our other social services.
I'll go next. Is this on? Can you hear me okay? Sure. Okay. So as Kyle mentioned, he is a HFSS there coordinating element at the state level. And as part of the County of Hawaii Civil Defense Agency, we are basically the coordinating element at the county level. So what does that mean? We have the State Space and Emergency Operations Center, where all the players that are relevant to whatever disaster may be happening at the time, a hurricane, a tsunami warning, whatever the issue may be, all the players come into our facility and we are the coordinating element to make sure police and fire, parks and rec, and the highways can all coordinate together so a unified, comprehensive disaster response can happen.
Our role during a disaster is to serve, we have a liaison within,
Byron Hawaii has a liaison sitting within the EOC, and in that capacity, our network serves as a communication and information conduit, both from within the EOC out through the community, and then vice versa from our network of over 20 community hubs to our liaison up to the EOC. In addition to that, what we help to coordinate during a disaster is what is often referred to as spontaneous volunteers. And oftentimes, spontaneous volunteers with a formal coordinating body can be seen as the cats that no one really wants to engage or try to herd. And so through ongoing relationships that we build 364 days of the year during the blue skies time, we are able then to serve as an effective coordinator to those responses happening in the community.
Aloha. So with the Office of Recovery and Resilience. And so during an emergency, we stand up when the emergency goes. So when Jaime sets up, we're going to follow suit and set up with them. And our main job is to monitor response, understand the damage picture, how they're responding, what they're responding to. And as they begin to stabilize, then we're working for a recovery strategy so that we can move from response into the long-term recovery and try to get people back to them as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you giving that overview. The first question we have is, really, I can do the next slide. Oh, perfect. Yeah, for Vibrant Hawaii, you folks have been active in emergency preparedness, as you just shared a little bit. What are the strengths that you feel community-based organizations bring to this area and to disaster response if we're talking?
So community, essentially, you're talking about hyper-local knowledge. I'll give a quick example. There was about a year or so ago. About a year or so ago, there was an incident in Hamakua where electricity had been down for several days. And within the EOC, they were preparing to mobilize. And one of the pieces of information that they had within the EOC was that there was a lot of kupuna in the area, which is true. Look at the census data, there's a lot of kupuna. So plans were being made to stand up within Honoka'a, a shelter, because the folks were saying there's a lot of kupuna in the area, they've been without power for so many days, we gotta do something. So I called our hub in Honoka'a and I said, here's what's happening in the EOC, what are you hearing? And she was like, wow, it's true. We never have power for a few days. True, we have plenty kupuna. But you know what? All of our kupuna, most of them, they grew up in Waipio with no power. So they're actually good. And the other thing is, we have power outages so frequently in our community. Pretty much everybody has generators. So what we don't need is an emergency shelter. What we do need is gas cards to keep our generator running. And it's that kind of hyper-local knowledge and information that really brings value to emergency response.
Janice, you highlight the sort of the composition, the experience, and the domain knowledge is critical at the community level. Ryan, I wonder if you'd share this. The Salvation Army has a pretty unique relationship with the state, say the statewide community, when it comes to emergency feeding. I wonder if you could share a little bit about your experience there and that little position with the city.
For me personally, I started in January 24. So working with the state and the counties, trying to figure out how we're going to provide meals to everybody in time of need. Yeah, it's been challenging. It's challenging, but it's a good collaboration. We worked well with Red Cross, the Food Bank. Myself, I come from a first responder background, so I'm used to getting a call at 2 a.m. that, hey, there's a barricade situation, there's a shelter set up, can you come and see 40 people? Yeah, I'll be there, kind of thing. Did I answer your question?
Well, you did. I was wondering if you might elaborate a little bit. There is a very unique position that Salvation Army has, right, with an MOU?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. So we are the lead agency for the state. So oftentimes we'll work with John Vera, coordinating the different different agencies that volunteer, try to coordinate all the feeding for the different shelters that get stood up. I haven't been fully tested yet on a state level, but the Salvation Army has been there.
Thanks so much. Yeah, good to hear how these pieces fit together. Next question is for Tom. We'd love to hear about what your agency does in terms of emergency feeding and also coordination.
Sure, happy to answer that question. Let me just get this mic a little closer. So on emergency feeding, it's kind of something that was born out of different points of distribution, if you will, that we host. So my involvement in the points of distribution process really started during the COVID-19 pandemic. I was just running the food pod, for example. That was really the Hawaii Island food basket. But I was running the COVID-19 testing and vaccination pods. We'll say we weren't giving out food, but we were making sure people had access to testing and vaccination if they wanted to. So my role in that, and this is how I'm writing the pod plan, the food pod plan for the county of Hawaii. I really want to make sure I understand the whole landscape, and I realize that folks like Janice and Kristen at the Heaivilin Food Basket, they know the food distributors. They have that network. The things that we could help bring to the table are the logistics. So the point of contact, the single point of contact, all government requests like traffic cones, traffic signs, LUAs, staffing, all sorts of things. We can bring all of that to the table through various means. So that's really the strength I think that we bring as we're logistics people. We kind of understand that role pretty well. So we've offered to various organizations, this is something we can help you with if you would like to pursue it. You know, we'd be glad to be participants.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the pod distribution plan as well?
Sure. So I'll speak specifically to what I've been, personally, I've been working on for the last several months. I think it started maybe in April, May. It was this point of distribution plan. Now, I'll say that the pod framework is already out there. It works. But what we found is it's not quite written in one place and codified all in one place. So that's kind of what I'm putting together, is really understanding how these pods work and offering to those like Janice and Kristen, like offering pod sites that we can explore and being that sole government contact for many of the sites. For example, on Hawaii Island are county parks that we could just go to. So we could get a request, hey, can we use this county park? And we have that site all planned out with traffic routes and arrows and what the traffic signs go and where all the people go. And all that is just laid out in the plan so that when we actually need to enact this plan, we can just pull the book off the shelf and say, here's what we're going to do.
Well, when it comes to books on the shelf, I'll say as a planner, there might be no greater volume of planning documentation than at the federal level, right? Known for paperwork. However, I'm curious, Kyle, if you might share a little bit about it. It seems like things at the federal level have been changing a bit of late. I'm curious how Haima is responding, is thinking about some of these issues, and how that shapes your work with other county emergency management agencies.
Obviously, we don't know what FEMA 2.0 is going to look like. There's tons of uncertainty with what's going to happen next year, let alone 5 years from now. So as of right now, we're continuing our normal planning processes that are required by FEMA, but in the background, behind semi-closed doors, we're also stepping up our efforts to be more self-sufficient as a state. So John Vieira and our community outreach team, they're really stepping up to do community outreach efforts, for the term HR, P3, PEOC. So we're really focused on engaging with the communities to make sure that they are prepared, to make sure that individuals and families are prepared, to make sure we are constantly pushing that. We are also trying to step up our engagement with private partners to leverage the on-island resources and whatever other resources they may be able to provide.
Yeah, I guess for the uninitiated who do not have a full diet of acronyms, do EOC for us?
Yes, EOC, Emergency Operations Center, BEOC, Business Emergency Operations Centers, equivalent to our partnership with private entities, P3, Public-Private Partnership, HR, Hawaii Hazards and Resilience Program, Awareness Resilience Program.
To get all that?
Plenty.
There will be a test. Actually, there will be a handout around it that was compiled by one of our steering committee members, which is a wonderful thing.
I want to pass it over to David and hear a little bit about, you shared a little bit about when you folks activate, Haima's setting up, and then you folks are coming in to think about recovery. Can you share a bit about the office and, how you are working on building collaboration amongst agencies and entities?
Of course, work with our state partners. Many of the same people that Haima works, we have representatives in the same sense. We're also set up similar to what Kyle was mentioning as emergency support functions, we have recovery support functions. Although they're not grouped in exactly the same way on the emergency management side, they're a little bit, I guess you say, bigger or broader in sense. So we're developing strategy plans, and so that relies heavily on understanding the gamut picture, and then what response ʻāina the county is putting on. By understanding that, then we'll work out recovery strategies to try to solve whatever else is the issue, ranging from, it could possibly be food, but it could be infrastructure problems, it could be housing needs and things like that. For much of our work, as our name implies, resiliency, so comes from outside of the emergency area. And we want to try and do things, of course, that improve infrastructure and try to make it stronger. And of course, being more resilient allows us to recover much, much quicker. And that's ideally what we want. Speaking of food and things like that, we have kind of a two-pronged approach. We want to be able to build resiliency in the sense of having things on hand. So if we should lose support or have a hard time importing things, that there's some type of emergency stocks in the island. So we're working with some teams to private partners to try and build these stocks and have these emergency warehouses of emergency style rations. And then the other side, again, is hardening and being more resilient in our Polish system and trying to make it more capable to be able to handle, especially commodity importation during emergency crisis. So, of course, that's much longer term in nature, and it'll probably take quite a few years to come to realization, but that's basically our strategy. So kind of two-pronged strategy of what happens after the response and the resiliency strategy throughout the cycle when we're not in an emergency.
So we can see there's a slew of different activities happening across the state. I wonder if anybody would maybe share an example of some cross-jurisdictional or scale of response, how the county and the state maybe could or do work together, or how county government or county and community rather could pursue better interface, or maybe a bright spot to experience.
Our name is Vibrant, so we have a lot of bright spots. So the work of coordinated, community-led food distribution, I think really started with an invitation from Sarah Freeman and Dexter Kishida in 2021 with a phone call about a program called Cocoa for Keiki. It's an annual summer food service program. They had given me great enthusiasm about doing this on Hawaii Island with all of 10 days notice. And my first response was, hell no. Like, I don't even like going grocery shopping for my own kids. So it makes you think you can do this for Little Island. And they were like, we got you. And connected me with amazing folks that helped to build our capacity as an organization. The first year, we worked with over 20 community-based orgs and served 4,000 kids for a 6-week period. And every year since then have continued to scale. This past summer, feeding 6,000 kids every week with 1 week's supply of shelf-stable food and fresh produce throughout the entire summer. What this has become in our language, in our organization, we call it an annual drill. And it's something that happens during hurricane season. It's something that happens where we must coordinate with partners on the food system side. What happens is we get to know local farmers, we get to know food hubs, we get to know drivers of companies like HFA. Those drivers are learning the routes in rural communities. They're beginning to understand what road they gotta take, where does the guava branch hang low, and they got to avoid that part. They're learning backup space, how to unload, all of these things that become so critical. And I believe it's because of that commitment to continue to practice this at a community level. On any given summer when we do this, it's between 500 and 700 volunteers. It is community driven, it is community led, it's communities coming together to do this. I believe that's why when we got a phone call at the end of October saying we're looking at SNAP benefits not happening in the month of November, what can we do? It's because of that practice that has been done consistently over years of time that 14 community sites were able to stand up, bring together 500 volunteers to serve over 4,000 families on a weekly basis for a period of 3 weeks, not only with food, but also because of the experience, they understood if we have the funding, what's going to be really important for these families is gas cards. And they knew that because of the practice they had done every year and seeing what were the barriers and what were the challenges of folks being able to get to sites. Because of the practice, they knew we can't just do major sites around the island. We have to find those rural areas and be present there because people just can't access. It's not accessible to everyone to have just 4 or 5 locations to get to. It's because of their practice that some of these sites said, you know what, popping this up during a workday is not going to work for my community. These are working families. We have to make it accessible in the times that they can actually get to it, because if not, we're not really being helpful in the way that we can be. And so I think that's a really bright spot this year. In addition to what was happening, we had incredible support from Tom and Civil Defense, like he said, helping to coordinate tents because it was pouring rain, helping to coordinate traffic cones. We were able to partner with the food basket because we had some ranchers that donated beef and we needed a refrigerated vehicle. We were able to partner with the Red Cross, who provided a driver for Kristen's refrigerated vehicle so we could all make this happen together. And I think that is an incredibly bright example of what can happen when we're willing to trust one another and work across sectors and work with community, taking the lead for their community.
Just wondering if anybody else on the panel, I think one of the things we're trying to pull out is kind of like, what are the different roles? So we've got state agencies, we've got county agencies, we've got community partners, there's different kinds of agreements, there's different roles. Just wondering if maybe Kyle, from your vantage point, you might want to say a little bit about, what Haima really specializes in and what you don't do, where you really depend on, say, the county and community to come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said at the beginning, Haima is primarily a coordinating agency. So it is essential that county community-based organizations are prepared to act while we are taking care of all the red tape that we have to slough through when an incident happens. So we're not on the ground, we're not clearing roads, cutting trees, anything like that. We are coordinating the folks that do go out there and cut the trees and clear the roads. So like we saw in Lahaina, the community is going to act first. We are confident that's going to happen. We know when something occurs and the county is in it and they are responding at their level, we are also responding at our level, coordinating the higher level response as needed. So we're mainly coordinating, but it is very important that community-based organizations and individuals and families are ready to take care of themselves in the immediate aftermath, because we do have processes that are unfortunately essential, but they're in place and they're necessary so that we can make sure the long-term recovery is in place and things return back to normal at somewhat of a steady pace.
So I was going to say, Tom.
I'll follow up real quick. So Kyle mentioned that Haima is there to support, but what does that really mean? One thing that Haima does very well is that whenever we can't find resources or we just don't have whatever we need to take care of whatever the situation is, we can put in the system called a formal request for assistance. And that gets to them and they vet that and goes all through these different approval processes. So one example, we may need a helicopter from the National Guard to help us put out a wildland fire. And that happens often. So we will request for the helicopter, and it has to go through the formal processes because ʻāina and the Hawaii State National Guard are closely linked. So they'll vet that through the process and get the appropriate approvals. And then once they do, yes, that helicopter is now available to help you on scene manage the fire. So I want to make sure that Jaime, we do value their assistance, because if that RFA process wasn't there, then it would be a little bit of a harder time for us to coordinate getting those resources that we needed.
Hi, I'm Dottie from Hauʻula, and I would just like to say I really appreciate all your comments, but on Oahu, the Hawaii Food Bank has an emergency network food system, and I really think Kim should be sitting up here talking about that too, because they do an amazing job, and we run in Hauʻula like 5 food programs. They operate most of those with us. We've been working with them for 10 years. And they had the network set up already across Oahu. I know it's different in different counties, and but I think Oahu, I must step up and say they have an amazing system. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie Dottie. Actually, this afternoon, Amy Miller is presenting Oahu Feeding Task Force. Any questions?
Given the uncertainty of federal funding, how is the state prepared to continue to fund? And also, how do each of you get the capital you need to cover the gaps, not just now, but into the future? Because it seems it's probably a private-public partnership that's keeping this afloat.
Yeah, so how is the state prepared to continue funding? I can't speak for the whole state, but Haima does have a couple different funds that we can pull from to fund our essential services. We are constantly talking with the ledge to try to pass more bills to continue funding essential services where they're needed, or to continue funding our Haima services so that we can maintain readiness when something does happen. It's obviously limited. What we can tap into, there is the major disaster fund when there is an incident, but that is very specifically limited by legislative language. So we're working all avenues possible, but digging into the community relationships is super important for us too.
Kaufau for KP is a federal program. It's a USDA program. We've already started having conversations with our board about if that funding should be jeopardized. What's our plan for this summer? We have some care because it's a reimbursement program and because of the scale at which we operate. We have some funds that have carried over year upon year. Aloha in Action, which is what we just held in response to the government shutdown, was fully funded by community. And so a call went out, and within 3 days' time, our community had generously contributed upwards of $700,000. It was definitely for community by community. But some of the other things that we're looking at for long-term investments is we've partnered with Keala and Otutami, and they'll be sharing more about the work that they do with Nakalaiwa to support now up to 20 communities on Hawaii Island with training and the equipment for freeze drying. And for us, that's an investment in long-term food security and disaster preparedness. The next step is really developing the partnerships, both with local farmers. When we were talking, Senator was sharing about B-grade produce, developing relationships with hoteliers for the food that they have in excess. As much as we have a food shortage, we also have food excess happening, and there is opportunity to leverage those resources for long-term food security for our island. And so that's kind of how we're thinking, both like immediate short-term and also looking at investments long-term.
For Salvation Army, of course, a lot of it is on donation. We operate on donations. For our social services, a lot of that is either through federal or state-funded programs. But for my program, the Emergency Disaster Services, is the bulk of it is from donations, the generous donations. We also can provide food through our partnerships with Domino's, Walmart, Food Basket, and other agencies like the grocery stores. They'll provide stuff that we can either prepare or if we can purchase, we'll start purchase foods, and that helps bolster the economy and keep other businesses going during an emergency.
Oh boy. Okay. EMPG, another acronym for y'all. Emergency Management Preparedness Grant, Performance Grant. It is one of our main sources of funding at Haima. We do pass through a portion of it to the counties as well. A lot of it goes towards staffing, and again, kind of the background services that are not sexy, but essential to keep Haima running. Since it is one of our main programs of funding, we are wanting to make sure that it gets spent properly, but the future is very uncertain. We are not sure what 2026, 2027 EMPG will look like if it exists. We are at a bit of an impasse with 2025 currently, pending some legislation, which you might have heard about. So it's a very important program, but it is up in the air as far as what's going to happen next.
And this is the FEMA
grant. Yeah.
It runs through the state, Haima, 2 county emergency management agencies. So one of the primary funds that supports a lot of planning, staff positions, and otherwise is wavering at the federal level. Meanwhile, the entity with the primary responsibility, that's coordinating role for Salvation Army with the memorandum of understanding with the state for feeding, is not funded by the state for that role. And community entities, like most nonprofit organizations, are left to determine their own funding sources, right? And including those like food bank partners and food banks and their partner agencies. So if we happen to be interested in cultivating a more resilient future, it seems like funding might be a really good avenue for the state, counties, and our communities to be thinking through a little bit more. I think we have time for a couple more questions.
Just because you guys are with, the different entities statewide, and in disasters, we learn so much. I just want to know if you guys can share a little bit about your feedback processes for the community to submit different suggestions, issues that came up, and how you guys run through those suggestions to, modify and pivot your own systems so that we're not encountering the same issues disaster after disaster.
I'll start by answering that question. I don't have any food specific examples yet. It's something our office, we deal with everything. So I'll give an example. So several examples. The last major incidents that we've had, the tsunami warning on July 29th, we had a low pressure weather system in January 29th. We had Hurricane Honoree last August. We had the brush fires that Maui obviously had more. We had some of our own. And Aloha, for example, when it erupted. So we have a formalized process that we follow after every major incident, and we'll define that through certain thresholds. After every major incident, we'll do an after-action review process. And we will we'll write a report, and the report is twofold. One, the first part of it is just what happened, just the facts of the incident. What exactly happened? Second part is the after-action review, and then it culminates in the after-action report. So that review process is also, that's twofold. So the first part is we send out a survey to everybody who is participating in the Emergency Operations Center on the field. Folks like Vibrant Hawaii get that survey also, so they have an opportunity to comment through these general questions that we have, and they can say whatever. It's totally open-ended. But we are able to zero in on a few metrics because we have a scale process, and then there's an open-ended comment process, so we can really run some data statistic analysis. And then the second part of that is once we get that feedback, I look at it, analyze it, and then we actually have an in-person discussion where, depending on, some are larger, like the Mauna Loa one was very big. Some of the other ones may not be as many people, maybe 20 folks, but we'll have a group discussion about how that went, how these certain elements, so they were guided through a series of very specific questions on how this went, how that went, and then there's an open-ended, well, how did, whatever, if we didn't discuss it, how did that go? So we do that meeting, and then at the end of the day, a final, what we call a final incident report is written, and we take everyone's feedback and we condense it, look at everything, and then find at least 3 recommendations that can be applied to future incidents. So the goal of those after action reviews are really to make sure that we can learn across incidents. So it's not always specific to a tsunami response or a wildfire response, but hopefully it can be what we term an all hazard response. It can be applicable across the board. So that's really what we try to do.
Yeah, real quick. So we follow similar process to Tom and all the counties. We implement a corrective action plan based on the feedback from our AAR. We use a corrective action plan to design our exercises, our yearly exercises, or update our plans accordingly. I can also speak on behalf of ESF6. We hear a lot of what's going on the ground. So when we do our ESF specific AAR, we get the community member feedback and try to fix what we can at our level.
Yeah, anything you want to weigh in, David, just briefly before we close?
No, I was pretty much going to say about the same thing, is that like most of the emergency management agencies, we follow the similar after action review. We'll be taking account, and we also attend theirs or the counties or whoever we're working with, as well as if there's any other entities, private entities are working, that we've worked with, if they're having one, then we'll meet with them as well and do very much similar. We'll try to make an objective look at it, understand, where the corrective action or process is. And then for our office, we control a few, like the State Recovery Operations Plan. We control that, so we can make those updates immediately as soon as we see the need. And then we also do a review process. So if we're going to make an update, we'll go back to our stakeholders and say, this is the plan. Most of the time, they're part of it. So usually it's fairly easy for us as far as doing that. And we actually did that with, after the Maui wildfires. The original recovery operations plan was developed during COVID, and it's probably set up to be more COVID specific versus what Tom was saying as all hazards. And upon realizing that, we started rewriting it almost immediately. So now we have a more updated version and more phased approach to any recovery. So all hazard oriented, so that we can use doing better.
Thank you all. Well, it feels like we're just beginning to peel back the layers, at least for me, trying to understand how things are interconnected, what the pathways are for community engagement. So we're kind of, this is peeling back in the beginning, but we've got the next 2 days for folks to engage and to kind of get more into greater depth on specific case studies and looking at, how this has worked in practice with this afternoon session, as well as a lot more fun stuff tomorrow. So just want to thank our panel so much for your amazing mana'o this morning.